Imagine waking up one day and your home is gone. Not destroyed, just gone, vanished. That's what happened to the Spinosaurus. One season, he had a river full of fish. The next season, cracked mud and death. And a 50-foot, 7-ton predator built for water, suddenly trapped on land. Let me take you back 95 million years to the middle of the Cretaceous period. This was North Africa, but not the desert you know today. This was a lush river delta, crisscrossed with waterways, teeming with fish, crocodiles, and the most unique predator to ever exist, Spinosaurus. We'll call him River. River was massive, 50 feet long from snout to tail, 7 tons of muscle, bone, and specialized hunting machinery. But what made him truly unique was his body. He wasn't built like other large predators. He was built for water. His skull was long and narrow, like a crocodile's, perfect for snatching fish from the water. His teeth were conical, designed to grip slippery prey, not tear flesh like T-Rex. His nostrils were positioned high on his snout, so he could breathe while mostly submerged. His bones were dense and heavy, unusual for dinosaurs, which helped him dive and stay underwater. And then there was the sail, a massive structure of bone and skin extending from his back, rising 6 feet tall. Scientists still debate its purpose, a temperature regulation, display, fat storage, but one thing was certain: it made River unmistakable. For 30 years, River had lived in paradise. His territory was a section of river about 5 miles long, deep and slow-moving, perfect for his hunting style. The water was full of prehistoric fish awesome as large as cars, Onchopristis, a giant sawfish, Mawsonia, a massive coelacanth. These weren't the small fish of today. These were monsters. And River was the apex predator of this aquatic world. His hunting technique was simple but effective. He would wade into the river until the water reached his chest. Then he would stand absolutely still, head submerged, waiting. His nostrils stayed above water, his eyes scanned below, and when a fish swam within range, strike. His jaws would snap shut with incredible speed, conical teeth piercing through scales and flesh, holding the thrashing prey until it stopped moving. River could catch and consume a 200-pound fish in minutes. He needed to eat about 100 pounds of food daily to maintain his massive body. But that was easy. The river provided. The river always provided. Until it didn't. The change started subtly. River didn't notice at first. The dry season came every year. The water level dropped a bit. The fish became slightly more concentrated, actually making hunting easier. But this year was different. The water kept dropping. And dropping. And dropping. After 2 months of no rain, River's 5-mile stretch of river had shrunk to 3 miles. The deep pools he favored were becoming shallow. The fish were still there, but something felt wrong. After 3 months, the river was only 1 mile of flowing water. The rest had become isolated pools, disconnected from each other. River found himself stuck in the largest pool, maybe half a mile across, and only 10 feet deep at its center. The fish population was crashing. Too many predators, a river, crocodiles, other smaller Spinosaurus competing for a dwindling food source in a shrinking space. River was still eating, but not well. Maybe 60 pounds a day instead of 100. His body began to use its fat reserves. The sail on his back, which had stored fat, began to look less impressive. After 4 months, the pool was 200 meters across. The water was murky, stagnant, beginning to smell of decay. Most of the fish were dead. River was catching maybe 1 fish every 2 days. He was losing weight rapidly. And then, after 5 months of drought, River woke up one morning and knew something was catastrophically wrong. The sound was gone. For his entire life, River had fallen asleep to the sound of moving water, the gentle flow of the river, the splash of fish, the calls of water birds. It was the soundtrack of his existence. But this morning, silence, just the buzz of insects. River lifted his head and looked at his pool. It was half the size it had been the day before. The water level had dropped 3 feet overnight, and he could see the muddy bottom in places where yesterday there had been water. The river was dying, not slowly anymore, fast. River spent that day hunting desperately. He caught nothing. There were no fish left. They were all dead, their rotting bodies floating on the surface of the shrinking pool. He drank deeply. He didn't know when he would have water again. That night, River slept at the edge of the pool, his body partially in water, as he always had. It was comforting. Safe. Home. When he woke, the water was gone. Not all of it. There was still a puddle in the center of what had been his pool, maybe 50 feet across, 6 inches deep. But it was mud more than water. Undrinkable. River stood at the edge of the cracked mud crater that had been his home for 3 decades and bellowed. A deep, mournful sound that echoed across the dead river valley. No answer came back, because there was no one left to answer. The other Spinosaurus who had shared this river were gone, dead or fled. River was alone, in a landscape that was no longer suitable for him. For the first time in his life, River had a choice to make: stay here and die, or leave and try to find water. But Spinosaurus weren't built for long-distance travel on land. Their legs were relatively short compared to other large predators. Their feet were partially webbed, great for swimming, terrible for walking long distances. Their center of gravity was forward-weighted, making land locomotion inefficient and exhausting. Everything about River's body screamed, water creature. He was a dinosaur that had gone back to the water, like a whale, but not as completely. He still needed land, but he was most comfortable in water. And now, there was no water. River spent 3 days at the dead river. He found a few small pools in what had been tributaries. He lapped up the muddy water desperately. He tried to hunt land animals, a small herbivore that came to drink from one of the remaining puddles. But his hunting technique was all wrong for land. He was too slow, too obvious, too clumsy. The prey escaped easily. On the 4th day, River made his decision. He would find another river. There had to be water somewhere. Rain fell somewhere. Rivers flowed somewhere. He just had to find it. The journey began at dawn. River oriented himself northeast, toward distant mountains he could see on the horizon. Mountains meant rain. Rain meant rivers. The first day of walking was the hardest thing River had ever done. His body, built for gliding through water, was awkward on land. His short legs churned constantly. His massive weight, as 7 tons, pounded his joints with every step. His partially webbed feet dug into the sand inefficiently. By midday, he had traveled maybe 3 miles. His muscles ached. His mouth was dry. The African sun beat down mercilessly. He found no water. That night, River collapsed in the shade of some dead trees. He had never been this tired. In the water, movement was easy, effortless. On land, every step was torture. He slept fitfully, his body unused to sleeping completely on dry land without any water nearby. The second day was worse. River's thirst was becoming serious. His thick, crocodile-like skin was designed to handle water loss better than typical dinosaur skin. But there were limits. He needed to drink. He found nothing. Just endless dry riverbeds, cracked earth, dead vegetation. On the 3rd day of walking, River found water. A small pool, maybe 20 feet across, fed by an underground spring. It was stagnant and warm, but it was water. River drank for 10 minutes straight. His massive body had been dehydrating despite its adaptations. The relief was enormous. He stayed by this pool for 2 days, recovering his strength. There were a few small fish-a-nothing like the giants he used to catch, but food nonetheless. He ate them gratefully, But he knew he couldn't stay. This pool was too small, not enough food to sustain him long term. It was a rest stop, not a home. He continued northeast. Over the following weeks, River developed a new routine: walk at dawn when the temperature was tolerable, rest during midday heat, walk again at dusk, sleep at night. He followed dry riverbeds, hoping they would lead to water. Sometimes they did dismal pools, temporary puddles that hadn't completely evaporated yet. He drank from all of them, even when the water was foul. He tried to hunt. But land hunting was foreign to him. He scared away more prey than he caught. His ambush technique didn't work on land. There was nowhere to hide when you were 50 feet long with a 6-foot sail on your back. He was starving. Slowly but surely. His body was consuming itself, burning muscle for energy when there was no fat left to burn. After 6 weeks of travel, River reached the mountains, and he found what he was looking for: a river. Not a large river, not like his old home, but a flowing river nonetheless, with clear water and living fish. River waded in with relief so profound it was almost pain. The cool water on his skin, the familiar sensation of buoyancy, the return of mobility and grace. It was like coming back to life. He submerged his head and spotted fish immediately. Smaller than what he was used to, but fish. He caught 3 that first day, maybe 30 pounds total. Not nearly enough, but more than he'd eaten in weeks. For several days, River hunted this river, rebuilding his strength. The fish were smaller and harder to catch in the faster current. His technique, perfected in slow, deep waters, was less effective here. But he was managing. And then he met the other Spinosaurus. She was younger, maybe 20 years old, and this was her river. She had lived here her whole life, and she didn't appreciate an intruder. The confrontation happened on the 5th day. River was hunting in what he thought was just another stretch of river, but it was her territory's core. She approached from downstream, moving through the water with the grace River had lost during his weeks on land. She was smaller than him, maybe 40 feet long, 5 tons about, healthy and strong, where he was malnourished and weakened. She bellowed a warning. River, exhausted and desperate, ignored it. She attacked. The fight was brief and brutal. In the water, they were both in their element. Jaws snapped, claws raked. The massive sail on River's back was bitten and torn. Under normal circumstances, River's size advantage would have made him dominant. But he wasn't under normal circumstances. He was starved, exhausted, injured from his long journey. She was healthy and defending her territory with the fury of someone fighting for survival. River lost, not catastrophically. He wasn't killed, but he was driven away, bleeding from multiple wounds, his sail damaged, his pride destroyed. He retreated upstream into a narrower section of river with fewer fish. The female returned to her prime hunting grounds. River spent the next week in his reduced territory. The wounds healed slowly, but something else was breaking his spirit. He was a displaced refugee in a river that didn't want him. The fish here were scarce. Other predators, crocodiles, smaller Spinosaurus juveniles, competed for the limited resources. This wasn't home. This wasn't paradise. This was barely survival. And then the drought reached this river too. It took longer. The mountains provided more reliable rain. But eventually, the water level began to drop. The river began to shrink. River watched it happen with a sense of doom. He knew what was coming. He'd seen it before. He left before it got as bad as his original river. But where could he go? He wandered for another month. He found 2 more rivers. Both times, he encountered territorial Spinosaurus, who drove him away. He was always the intruder, always the outsider. His body was failing. The wounds from fights weren't healing properly. Infection was setting in. He'd lost so much weight that his bones were visible. The sail on his back, once magnificent, was tattered and scarred. River found himself at the coast. The ocean. He had never seen the ocean before. His entire life had been in rivers. But here was water. Endless water. He waded in. The salt stung his wounds. The waves pushed him around. His body, built for river currents, was clumsy in ocean swells. But he tried to hunt. The ocean was full of fish. But they were fast, adapted to open water. Nothing like the river fish he knew. He chased them futilely, his technique completely wrong for this environment. He caught nothing. On his third day at the coast, River was approached by a massive marine Crocodile-like, 40 feet of muscle and teeth, perfectly adapted to both salt and fresh water. It saw River not as a fellow predator, but as prey. A weak, dying dinosaur struggling in unfamiliar water. River fought back, but weakly. The Sarcosuchus latched onto his leg and pulled him under. River thrashed, his massive jaws snapping, his claws raking the crocodile's armored hide. The fight lasted 10 minutes. River managed to wound the Sarcosuchus enough that it released him and retreated. But River's leg was mangled. Swimming became nearly impossible. He dragged himself onto the beach and collapsed. For 2 days, River lay on that beach. He drank seawater once, not understanding the danger. The salt poisoning made him violently ill. He was dying. Not from the wounds, though they were serious. From dehydration, starvation, exhaustion, despair. On the third morning, River managed to stand. His leg barely supported weight. His body was shutting down. But some primal instinct drove him forward. He limped away from the coast, back inland. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't die at the ocean. It felt wrong. He walked for a day, maybe 2 miles. His perception of time was breaking down. And then he found it. A small oasis, a pool fed by an underground spring, surrounded by a few trees. Not a river, just a pool. Maybe 60 feet across. But it had water. Clear, fresh water. River dragged himself into the pool and drank. He submerged his body, feeling the water support his weight again, feeling the heat and pain ease slightly. There were no fish. But there was water. River stayed in that pool. He was too weak to leave. His wounds were infected. His body was failing. But for the first time in months, he wasn't walking, wasn't searching, wasn't fighting. He was in water. Not his river. Not home. But water. River died 3 days later, lying in the shallow pool, his head on the muddy bank, his body partially submerged. He was 40 years old. For a Spinosaurus, that was a relatively long life. But the last 4 months had aged him decades. His body would lie there for weeks. Eventually, scavengers would find it. His bones would be scattered. Millions of years later, paleontologists would find some of those bones and marvel at the unusual aquatic adaptations. They would debate whether Spinosaurus lived mostly in water or on land. They would examine the bone density, the nostril position, the jaw shape. And they would conclude Spinosaurus was a water specialist, perhaps the most aquatic of all large dinosaurs, a creature that had adapted so perfectly to rivers that it became vulnerable on land. River's story would be lost, but the lesson would remain in his bones. Specialization is powerful. It allows you to dominate your niche like no other creature can. Spinosaurus was the ultimate river hunter, and no other large predator could compete with him in that environment. But specialization is also dangerous. When your environment changes, and environments always change, eventually you're trapped. You can't easily adapt to something new because everything about you is optimized for something specific. River was a master of his domain until his domain disappeared. And then he was just a refugee, stumbling through a world he wasn't built for, dying slowly because evolution had made him too perfect for one thing and useless at everything else. The drought that killed River wasn't unusual. North Africa went through climate cycles. Rivers appeared and disappeared. Species adapted or went extinct. Most creatures had some flexibility. Carnivores could switch prey. Herbivores could eat different plants. They could travel, adapt, survive. But a 50-foot, 7-ton fish-eating dinosaur built for deep water? When the water disappeared, he had nowhere to go. Nothing to become. No backup plan. Just slow death in a world that had moved on without him. Today, there are no more Spinosaurus. The species went extinct around 93 million years ago, not long after River's time. The exact cause isn't certain, but climate change and habitat loss were almost certainly factors. The rivers of Cretaceous North Africa dried up or changed, and the creature perfectly adapted to those rivers. Couldn't adapt to anything else. River's final resting place in that small oasis wasn't futile, it was appropriate. He died in water. Not his river, but water. Because a water dinosaur couldn't imagine being anything else, even when the water was gone, even when survival meant leaving the water behind. He returned to it at the end. Because sometimes, home isn't just where you live, it's what you are. And when home disappears, you disappear with it.